Hello, beautiful souls. This week we're going to deep dive into a quote that I heard and it deeply resonated with me and I believe holds powerful wisdom for all of us. So the quote is, "It's easy to love the light and what can be seen in plain sight. It's much harder to embrace the dark with no idea if you'll hit your mark." Just take a minute to let that sink in. Welcome to Spiritual Midwife, the podcast that tenderly guides you through the transformative journey of spiritual awakening and personal development towards the ultimate destination of soul sovereignty. I'm Claire Attio, a medicine woman and dedicated guide to the profound realm of soul sovereignty, and you are listening to Spiritual Midwife. I'll read it again. It's easy to love the light and what can be seen in plain sight. It's much harder to embrace the dark with no idea if you're hitting your mark. What does that bring up for you? What images, what emotions, what thoughts come to mind? The first part of the quote, "It's easy to love the light and what can be seen in plain sight," speaks really to our natural inclination towards clarity and certainty and positivity. We all do it. It's what I promote every single day. And we're drawn to what is visible, understandable, and pleasant, basically. The light represents all that is known and comfortable. It's easy to appreciate the good times, the successes, and the aspects of ourselves and our lives that are already illuminated and celebrated. In personal development, this light might represent the skills we've mastered, the achievements we're proud to share, the parts of our personality that are well received by others. It's our comfort zone. But then the quote challenges us with its second part. It's much harder to embrace the dark with no idea if you'll hit your mark. And I know when I heard that, I was like, yeah, it is. It is challenging. It does call for us to step out of our comfort zone, call for us to step into the unknown, the uncertain, and often the uncomfortable. The dark symbolises our fears and our doubts and parts of ourselves that we may not yet fully understand or even acknowledge. It's the shadowy terrain of our psyche where we hold a lot of our unresolved issues, our unhealed wounds, and our deepest vulnerabilities. It's harder to embrace the dark because the dark demands courage. It requires us to step into spaces where there are no guarantees. There is no clear, decisive vision for success. There is no way of knowing whether we're going to be successful. There's no easy answers. It's a journey of faith and trust, not just in the process, but in ourselves. And I'm going to repeat that. It's not just in the process, but in ourselves, because it's in ourselves that we struggle the most. To embrace the dark is to be willing to explore the depths of our being, to confront our shadows and to make peace with those unknown aspects. And I have done a podcast on shadow work, what's involved, how to do it. It's one of those aspects that we keep coming back to, and it's best to take it in bite-sized pieces as it shows up in your life. This quote shown up in my life, it had me exploring, and it had me exploring because it wanted me to share it. But in the past, it's had me exploring because there are things that I want to uncover, and absolutely in the future it will have me. There will be something else that comes onto my radar, that is put in front of me, so that I can explore something that needs to be explored within me. It's a process. I think that's what we really need to take on board. And I have seen, especially in the spiritual community, far too much in the last few years, people rushing, trying to rush through their healing, trying to rush through their understanding, trying to rush through, treating it like treating it like a process of how we live our lives. And we're seeking spirituality most of the time because how we were living our lives just isn't functioning, and yet we take that into spirituality. We try and use those same techniques, those same processes. We stuck in that same paradigm, and this is what we need to change. We need to allow ourselves to breathe, to assimilate, to digest, to gain the deeper understanding, to allow ourselves the time to become comfortable with the uncomfortable before we take on another aspect. It's about giving ourselves permission to be loving with ourselves, to be kind with ourselves. And that's a big part of the personal development, that learning to love ourselves, to hold ourselves with compassion, and to allow ourselves to grow in ways that are very profound and transformative. If we go into a new aspect like spirituality, but we take in all our own old techniques or our old paradigms or our old ways of doing it, we're not really learning. We're going through the motions. We're not really integrating. We're pen pushing. We're taking the intellectual knowledge, but we're not taking the emotional and spiritual knowledge in. So how can we begin to embark the dark parts of ourselves and our lives? Here, I'm going to give you a few steps to guide you along this journey. So the first one is acknowledgement of the dark. Begin by acknowledging the dark exists. This might seem simple, and I can hear you kind of all look a bit puzzled. I know when I was first told that, of course it exists, but we don't like to look at those aspects within ourselves, and so we tend to either put on the rose-coloured glasses or we look the other way. It's the hardest step to really acknowledge that there are darker aspects within us, especially when there's healing involved, needed, and that healing takes us right the way back to our childhood, not because we were abused in the conventional sense that we look at abuse, but because there was dysfunction that has had us develop patterns and behaviours that are not for our highest good. And that can bring up a whole host of emotions. So it is the hardest part to acknowledge there is darkness within us. It means admitting to ourselves that we have fears, we have doubts, and parts of our past and our personality that we'd rather ignore. The second is practice self-compassion. Approach yourself with kindness and understanding. Be loving towards yourself. Remember that everybody has a shadow side, and that it's a natural part of being human. Treat yourself with the same compassion you would treat and offer to a dear friend going through a hard time, working through their challenges in life. Afford that to yourself. Seek the deeper understanding. Reflection. Journal. It comes up every time, but it's absolutely such a game changer. Write about your fears, your doubts, your past experiences that still hold an emotional charge. And when I say an emotional charge, it still elicits that energetic reaction within you, that intake of breath or the holding of breath or your muscles tightening. Be aware of what your body's doing. Sometimes we can go, oh no, I'm not, no, yeah, that's just a memory, I don't hold any emotional charge. Because sometimes we could do the work and we think that we're completely healed. And I have done this many times. I think, oh yeah, I've done that, that's absolutely fine. And then 3-4 months later, or 3-4 years later, a different situation comes on, but it's within the same genre, if you like. And I've noticed in my body, I haven't been reactive. No, I haven't. I have healed of that aspect, but there was still a slight tension in my muscles or a clenching of my jaw. Be mindful of how your body is reacting so that you can gain that deeper understanding and you can actually be truly honest with yourself of where you are on that cycle of the journey. Lean into the discomfort. The only time we gain growth is when we step out of our comfort zones. When we feel that discomfort, instead of retreating, lean into it. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this discomfort? How can it help me to grow? And find support. You don't have to navigate the dark alone. Seek support from trusted friends, from mentors, from therapists. Sharing your journey with others, it not only helps you, but to discuss what's going on the outside, to vocalize your inner, deepest, darkest thoughts is very cathartic. But two, in doing so, allowing yourself that level of vulnerability in the company of another is in itself a very healing act. So few of us have been encouraged to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We were taught from a very young age to buckle up, buttercup, really toughen up, rather than allow ourselves to be in that space of vulnerability. And yet we can't get through life being a weeping willow, but neither do we flow through life when we turn ourselves into an immovable rock. So you get the cathartism from vocalizing, you get to soften and flow with the vulnerability. But here's the kicker, here's the absolute beauty of sharing, is you allow the person that's listening to you the permission to do it as well. I'm not saying they do it there and then, but when you trust somebody sufficiently to do that, to share that, to be that honest and that vulnerable, they are going to feel more inclined that when it's their turn to do the inner work, to reach out to you, they're not going to bottle it up. They go, okay, I know, I can go and speak with. And they can open up. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Even if you don't always see immediate results, and you rarely see immediate results, know that every step that you are taking towards understanding and integrating your shadow is a step towards greater wholeness and soul sovereignty. And so as we wrap up this episode, I invite you to take some time this week to reflect on your relationship with the light and the darkness within you, with the yin and the yang of your wholeness. What part of yourself are you comfortable with, and which parts of yourself do you shy away from? And how can you begin to embrace that dark with more courage and compassion? Remember, the journey towards soul sovereignty is not about perfection, but it's about wholeness, completeness, peace. Embracing both the light and the dark within us is an essential part of becoming our most authentic and empowered selves. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a review, share it with your friends, and we shall see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.